This week's energy is really all about identifying and then working to close the gap between the body and the soul. In Kabbalah, we learn that there are two experienced life forces that we encounter as human beings in our daily lives. There is the level of soul consciousness, which is the truth, which is pure, which is real, which is enlivening, which is beautiful and joyous. The level of soul consciousness, also known as the tree of life consciousness, is the one that exists inside of us that is completely and inextricably connected to the light of the Creator at all times. And so this is the consciousness which we aspire to, right? Which we want to experience constantly. Then there is the level of body consciousness, otherwise known as ego consciousness. Kabbalistically, we refer to it as the tree of knowledge, good and bad consciousness. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when we experience the ups and downs of life. Good things happen to us, we feel good momentarily, and then bad things happen to us, or perceivably negative things happen to us, and we feel down and disconnected, right? Our spiritual work is geared towards, over time, experiencing more and more of our soul consciousness and less of the body or ego consciousness. So more and more unending, lasting fulfillment, despite what's happening on the outside, but an internal state of true fulfillment in our experience more and more, and less of the ego or reactive consciousness, which is constantly reacting to what's happening on the outside, good or bad, right? Our work is to get to a place where we are living more and more from soul, less and less from ego. So that is the opportunity of this week. How do we close that gap, right? So the reactive nature, the ego nature of our experience becomes less and less, and our experience becomes more and more one of truth, more and more one of a soul-laden experience. And so what's a good sign as to where we are on that spectrum? Our teachers teach us that one of the clearest signs as to how soul-aligned our experience is day to day is to ask ourselves the question, and we should be asking ourselves that question specifically this week, given the opportunity, given the energy of this week. What is the amount of vitality and vigor that I'm experiencing in my day-to-day? And we could say from one day to another, some days we experience more vitality and vigor, some days less. But even intraday, within the same day, sometimes things are happening in a given set of hours in a day where we feel vital, we feel alive, we feel this sense of life, of vigor. And then other times we feel lower energy, we feel disconnected, we feel confused. We don't feel that same vitality. Within the answer to that question for each of us, how much vitality are we truly experiencing in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life, exists the answer as to how soul-aligned versus how ego-driven our daily experience is. We learn that in actuality, if we were living from a perfectly soul-aligned consciousness and experiencing a truly divinely soul-aligned existence each and every day, we would feel a sense of vitality and vigor inside, irrespective of what's happening on the outside, that was so beautiful and overwhelming and awe-inspiring. It would be our moment-to-moment experience, right? But let's be honest, the truth is that for all of us, there's times where we feel that, and we feel just grateful to be here, grateful to be alive. And there's times where we feel disconnected, right? So what can we do? What can we do, each one of us, to shift the needle, right? To start to close that gap. And the answer, Kabbalistically speaking, lies in a question, which again, the answer always lies in the question when we are referring to the wisdom of Kabbalah. And that question is truly, deep down, how much of our days, of our daily experience, how much of it are we spending as a being of sharing and of giving? And how much are we spending in receiving energy, looking for things to come to us, looking for, what is in it for me? Looking for, how am I being seen on the outside? Am I being validated? Do people like what I have to say? Do people like me? Right? Versus being a being of sharing. What can I give? What can I bring? And the truth of the matter is, when we're fully giving to give, when we're fully in the mode of sharing, without any notion of the what's in it for me at the end of the day, we're giving just to give, there must be an energy of vitality and eternity in that experience, in that behavior. So to the extent that we're experiencing a lack of vitality, we're living the experience of the ups and downs, we must know that we are not sharing or giving or coming from that giving energy to the fullest extent of our capability. So that is when the question is raised, how do I experience more vitality, more life in my life? Ask yourself the question, how much are you really sharing in your day-to-day? How much is your energy one of giving, one of emanation, rather than one of what's in it for me? What am I going to get? What am I going to make? How much am I going to make from this deal? What am I going to receive? Sit back and receive. Whether I put in the work or don't put in the work, well, what do I get in return? Unfortunately, that energy leads to a dead end. Leads to a dead end, whether it's in that moment or whether it's on a delay. If there's anything that's conceived, any opportunity, relationship, business endeavor that's conceived from the intention of what's in it for me, how am I going to make myself look better? How am I going to prove to people that I can do this or I can do that? How am I going to pad my reputation? Anything that's conceived with that intention must ultimately diminish and die. It cannot be a lasting, energetic birth. Energy can only live in vitality, which means that vitality must come from an intention of emanation, of sharing, similar to the light of the Creator, which is an endlessly emanating vital force, right? You know, I was listening to a podcast this week, which reminded me of the energy, related to the energy of this week, no surprise. It is a long form sit down interview with, I'm not going to name his name, but a very well known comedic actor and director, having a very beautiful conversation with a host that has particularly high consciousness. And he said something that struck me in the interview, in the latter part of the interview, which was, I think he was asked a question, what is the biggest difference in your experience of life now versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago? And what he said was, now, today, and he's done a lot of spiritual work, has had what one could say is a spiritual awakening, really significant transformation over the last 5 or so years in his personal life. He said, now I find so much joy in running at the pace of a turtle, whereas before I could only find that joy and pleasure if I was running rapidly and moving fast and amidst chaos. I could only find that joy and pleasure and that, let's say, vitality if there was chaos, ups and downs, and that's where I would find the fulfillment. But today, I'm happy to move at the pace of a turtle. And I find so much joy in the stillness and the slowness of that movement. And it got me, because it's perfectly emblematic of the energy and the opportunity of this week. And it's not about doing less. That's not the point that he hit on. It's not about diminishing your desire. In fact, this particular person is more inspired than ever to do meaningful work across different mediums and to share of his gifts with the world. But it's about sitting in the presence and the stillness of the now. And when you can come, and we've all experienced this, when you can come into a true appreciation and wonder for what is directly in front of you in a given moment, that feeling is the vitality of the soul, where the rest of the chaos of the world and all the noise and ups and downs and perceived positivity and negativity, when all of that can be silenced for just a moment. And for most of us, we get split seconds of this maybe throughout our day, or sometimes in meditation. When we touch that, that is the vitality of the soul. So our opportunity in this week is twofold. Number one, let's be conscious and aware of identifying how much of our day is really spent from an intention of connecting to that vitality through sharing, through being a being that is emanating, that is giving in every interaction, every one of our thoughts, words, and actions coming from that intention to give and to share. And as we do that, by first being aware of it, and then secondarily performing the actions that support that essence, right? Thinking about, visualizing how we can close the gap such that we can experience more and more of that soul-aligned essence in a moment-to-moment frame. That is the opportunity of this week. It's a powerful week, and that is the energy of the week. I will see you next week.